Well, Frank, we keep going round and round and round when it comes to cap space, and we're going to be stepping into that a little bit today. And of course, this segment is delivered by DoorDash. When you look around the league and teams that need to free up space, I mean, what could they be doing to possibly make room for someone like a Johnny Gaudreau? We keep hearing like the Flyers, Islanders, like any of these big clubs that are up against the cap that have to make space. What can they possibly do? We saw the Flyers just decided to buy out Oscar Lindblom's contract today. That's one step, but what more could potentially be done to entice a big free agent like a Johnny Gaudreau or a Nazem Kadri to their team?
Well, that was sort of the first indication that we got from the Philadelphia Flyers that they may be in the mix to do something bigger here, like targeting someone like Johnny Gaudreau on the open market, was that Oscar Lindblom buyout. I don't think they really wanted to do that. They were in a spot where he was the cleanest cut, the cleanest way to create some salary cap flexibility as they end up buying him out. But they need to do more if they're going to go after Johnny Gaudreau. And so all the three teams that have been rumored to be in on Johnny Gaudreau or to have interest include the Flyers, the Islanders, and the New Jersey Devils. The Devils have cap space and they don't need to move any pieces out in order to fit him in. They may ultimately do so anyway. There have been a couple guys on our trade targets board. A new one is out right now on dailyfaceoff.com, and it features a lot of these guys. You see the Lindblom, he's on there, but he was already bought out today. James Van Riemsdyk, the Flyers have explored some options on Van Riemsdyk. They're not thrilled with the price. 1 year remaining at $7 million, even though he's averaged 27 goals per season when you equate the shortened seasons in his 4-year stint, this most recent stint with the Flyers. It's that cap hit that's causing teams to certainly push back against the Flyers, and they're asking for a significant sweetener. I'm told the Detroit Red Wings and Arizona Coyotes have both offered the Flyers a lifeline. They are asking for a first-round pick in return to move off of Van Riemsdyk. I don't think that's the Flyers' first priority or interest at this point. I think they're in a spot where they much rather keep James Van Riemsdyk moving forward and hope that he has a great season. And if they're in the playoff chase, great, we'll keep him. If not, they're in a spot where they could potentially retain half on James Van Riemsdyk and get something in return should he put up another 20-plus goal season, which you can pretty much set your watch to. Travis Konechny and Ivan Provorov, two interesting names, both 25, both Ron Hextall draft picks, both signed to long-term deals, 3 years remaining each. And Chuck Fletcher laid the groundwork at this year's trade deadline. He did explore conversations for Konechny, for Provorov. If I was interested in moving these guys as a hypothetical, what could I get in return? Which teams would be interested? And this would be the exact moment in time he would be using that intelligence if he was going out to try and create some salary cap space. So those are two other potential options. I would rank them in the order that they're exactly listed. Van Riemsdyk first, Konechny second, and then Provorov third. As far as the Islanders, Anthony Beauvillier's name has been out there for a while. And what's interesting about Semyon Varlamov, we all know Ilya Sorokin, Mike, is the guy on Long Island. Lou Lamoriello has been pretty steadfast in his belief to this point that you need two goalies in order to win. It's not just going to be one guy carrying the load like Marty Brodeur did for 73 games for Lou Lamoriello back 20 years ago. That's not the case anymore. They know that's not the case. But it's also a bit of a luxury to have Varlamov at 1 year, $5 million. And they could move him somewhere else if need be. The thing is, if they were going to, they probably should have done it 2 weeks ago before some of these starting goaltending positions seem to be spoken for, at least at the very moment. So Varlamov as a backup option, if they need to unload him, a sort of break glass in case of emergency. And Beauvillier, I think there's been lots of interest in there for him. A guy who hasn't quite lived up to his cap hit, tons of potential there, no doubt a skilled player, but has struggled to kind of find that consistency in his game to get back to the level that the Islanders thought he could get to a couple years back when they signed him to that deal. So that's where we're looking at the moment on, if the Islanders, if the Flyers are going to be going after Johnny Gaudreau. If you start to see some of these names on this list go, or these teams make other moves, pretty good indication as you look at the chessboard and pieces start to move around that they would be the teams targeting Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah, and that dynamic between Soroka and Varlamov, the Islanders, that one's really interesting because I think they're very happy there. But how many goaltenders are out there that can truly step into being a number one easily, like a Varlamov. He could fill a lot of roles. So makes you wonder, what else from your trade targets list are you keeping an eye on? There's a lot of names floating around right now, Frank.
Yeah, there certainly are. JT Miller is at the top of the list. The guy in the second spot is Blake Wheeler and has been there for a while as the Winnipeg Jets continue to explore options. Mike, are you surprised when you look at the Jets in their offseason as to how quiet things have been to this point? It seemed like they were late getting started on the coaching search after Barry Trotz ended up turning them down and going and deciding to take a step back from coaching. They got that sorted out with Rick Bowness, but they're no further ahead yet on reshaping their roster. I would think that, today, tomorrow, the next day might be if they're going to be making a move where the rubber hits the road with regard to Blake Wheeler. But, no sign to this point. It's been very quiet on that front. And I'm also curious about the St. Louis Blues. I reported on Monday that David Perron is very likely to hit the market. You would know, living in St. Louis, the impact that would have. The guy has only ever signed a contract with the St. Louis Blues in his career. He's played all over the place. But St. Louis has been the place that he keeps coming back to. And you would think that given his success there, given the fact that he was at times the Blues' best player last season, that they'd find a way to make some space. But I'm told at the moment that the team has been engaged on re-signing Nick Leddy on the back end, and that's where the majority of their space, in addition to also needing to get a second goaltender to play with Jordan Binnington, has been their focus. So the Blues don't have the cap space to make a significant offer to David Perron at the moment. They could ultimately end up circling back, but it seems like Perron might be going elsewhere unless they're able to create some salary cap space. I think it's still unlikely that Vladimir Tarasenko gets traded. His name has been out there. I think they've explored the market for Torrey Krug, but nothing really to speak of yet. I'm really wondering what Doug Armstrong has up his sleeve there in St. Louis.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Perron, like you say, I mean, he's been so good with Ryan O'Reilly and chronically undervalued, man. His contract's $4 million. So at some point, you got to get some money in the bank. I wonder if there's a trickle down effect where he may be able to circle back with that team. One more for you here before we take off. You had a report that Oilers defenseman Brett Kulak's going to be going to free agency. Man, I talked to some people in Montreal before he went there at the deadline, and they all said, keep an eye on this guy. He can skate, he can play. Is there pretty good interest, you think, out there for Kulak?
Yeah, I do. I think when you look at the impact that he had on the Oilers' blue line, his size, his skating ability, and also the fact that he was rarely in trouble for the Oilers in their own end, just sort of that steady, quiet guy that you crave on your back end, that there is lots of interest. And I think the trouble is for Kulak and the Oilers, as they went back and forth trying to keep the Stony Plain native in oil country, is that what is he looking for? What does he want? Are you cashing in on a long-term deal? Can you sign him to a 5-year deal? I do think the Oilers had a 4 or a 5-year offer that was on the table. I think they presented a myriad of different things, including also a 2-year extension to keep him in Edmonton and say, hey, we'll address this later on as the salary cap begins to open up a little bit later, in 2-3 years with the cap rising. How does Brett Kulak want to approach this free agency? No shortage of options. As I reported on Monday, the Oilers and Kulak's camp met. Were unable to find common ground to this point, much in the same way that they've been with Evander Kane. They called Evander Kane's bluff and said, hey, if you think you can get 40 to 50 million bucks, go ahead and do so on the open market. We'll see if the Kane camp ends up circling back. And Kulak, I'm sure they will remain in touch with, as he seemed to be a strong stylistic fit. Want to keep in mind, too, on the Oilers front, Tyson Barrie very much remains on our trade targets board, in addition to Jesse Puljujärvi. When you look at Barrie, yes, there's lots of things in flux on the Oilers' back end, including Duncan Keith, who they formally announced his retirement today, and, of course, Kulak potentially leaving. But Barrie, when it's all said and done in a perfect world, I think the Oilers would rather not have that cap hit dedicated solely to a power play specialist when they feel like Evan Bouchard might be able to step up and take that role. So we'll see how Ken Holland shuffles around the chairs there on the Oilers' back end. They've got some significant decisions to make, and they finally have a little bit of cap flexibility to go out and do it. It's just a matter of finding the right fits.
Yeah, Bouchard, Broberg, you name it. There's a little bit coming along there that could take some role in Edmonton. Frank, great job as always. I know we've got a lot more that's going to be coming here in the next day before free agency opens tomorrow. This edition of Icebreakers delivered by DoorDash. all your favorites and more delivered right to your door. You can use those promo codes you see below us. If you're in Canada, DFODD. If you're in the United States, DFODD US. That's going to get you 25% off your first order, along with free shipping, delivered by DoorDash. You definitely don't want to cook today and tomorrow, man. There's way too much going on. So, Frank, great job.